memorized.
That-
Because
At
I
least
don't.
I
I just
know.
know.
At least I can. If I had a time traveling car, I could go back in time to 1939 and look at the stands and go, "Oh, Superman 8 is out. I got to go back in time a little more."
Yeah.
I know
All
how to
right, there
do
you
it.
go.
I don't need exact dates.
hmm
I can figure it out with
Yeah.
my time traveling car.
Right. It's like Batman said. It's a time machine. It doesn't matter when it gets fixed, as long as it gets fixed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. That was the same with what was that? See, I think it was Justice League, The Authority, where they were chasing each other through time, and whoever it was, the Superman. Listen, we don't have to rush. We
No, it's
we got
JLA Wildcats.
JLA Wildcats, was that it? We
Yeah.
don't have to rush.
hmm
We could, and that was also in. I remember time travel stories. Kurt Busiek and George Perez's Avengers. They had a Kang story in there where Kang, I think it was Kang's son, was like, Dad, why don't we just go back in time and kill them all? And he's like, no, time is our canvas, not our weapon. I was like, okay. That's why you're not.
Yeah. We wouldn't. Kang wouldn't do that because it wouldn't be fun.
Yeah. Kang wanted some fun.
Oh yeah,
He was looking for a good time.
if you're time traveling, you're having fun. You're building Sphinx that time travels. You're taking different names, and every
Yeah,
few years you bug the Fantastic Four.
killing them when they're babies isn't fun at all.
No. Werewolf by lunchtime. Hey guys, how are you doing?
Welcome,
He's
welcome.
already tomorrow.
Ah, he's having fun in the future.
There you go.
The future. Did you make it to the comic shop this week, Wilson?
I did not.
I didn't think you would after getting so many comics last week. You were probably like, we can wait.
It was that, and also it's like I'm on this deadline. I'm on my second to last card. Matter of fact, I'm on my last card because I just have to finish a few spot inks, and then that one's done, and I can move on to the other card. I was hoping to be done by noon, so I could rush out, go to the comic book shop, and then come back. Thank you.
But you weren't.
But it just didn't happen. I didn't get done until just a few minutes ago. And it's like, all right, you know what? I hear it's going to be 80 degrees tomorrow. So I think I'll take a nice leave of absence, so to speak, because I got to mail these things out. I'll just mail them out tomorrow. And then it will be like, okay, then I'm outside. Let's go take a trip to pick up some comics.
Yeah, I actually just checked the weather for tomorrow morning for my bike time because on my little weather station here, it's got rain in it. That doesn't mean it's going to rain. It just means it's got rain on my little weather station. I was like, is it going to rain tomorrow morning? And I looked and no rain tomorrow morning. And it's going to be 61 degrees at 9 a.m. I was like, whoa. That means a warm bike ride.
I haven't rode my bike. Decades, probably. Think about it.
I have been riding my bike for decades now. I think I started the route I'm on now regularly in the late 90s. So I've been riding 4 or 5 times a week since the late 90s on the same roads. Yeah.
Sorry, I got distracted. Like the phone started ringing, and I do like the new technology. It tells you scam likely. And it's like, all right, then don't even bother. If you think it's a scam, Just shut it off at the pass. Don't even bother to tell me.
Yeah. You don't even have to mention the phone call ever came through.
Exactly. If you
Mhm.
see it hits there, just knock that out.
No, it's those calls. Please join our WhatsApp group for many employment.
Did anyone watch the Fantastic Four trailer this week?
Yes,
They're
I
really
watched
good at
that
trailers. Once
yesterday.
again, I love watching the trailers. The movies I can skip, but they're
Yeah.
really good at trailers.
I enjoyed the trailer. A few years ago, I had made it a point to basically not have any expectations about the movie. Watch it. I enjoyed what I watched. I learned a long time ago, especially with Marvel movies, that the story that the trailer gives you may not necessarily be the story the movie's going to give you
That's why I
because it
like the
changes.
trailers.
Yeah,
The trailers always give you like a good story in a minute.
yeah,
3 minutes for a long trailer. I'm like, yeah. Now I don't need to see the movie. I liked the trailer.
yeah. Because some trailers they do it wrong by giving you way too much, but now you
Yes.
don't have to worry about it because they've been totally lying to you. I sat through the last Captain America movie remembering points from the trailer that never got shown. And it's like, no, I could have sworn there was stuff I seen.
Yep.
And then you go looking for the trailers, and it's like, oh, you have to really dig for that trailer.
Hmm.
So it's basically, oh, they had a story in mind, and then somewhere along the line, they changed the story. And so
Or
you,
sometimes they just come up with a different trailer for the story. I mean, different story for the trailer. They're just like, let's give
yeah,
them the best trailer. I think they do that now. I don't think they used to do that, but I think they do that now. I think
yeah,
they deliberately fake us out.
yeah, completely. Although I do recall there being like a headline somewhere along the line that said that movie trailers are no longer supposed to be able to lie to you anymore because too many people were complaining that what they saw in the trailer they never got, and it's like, well,
People still. It was funny.
again,
Where was? Oh, it was on. Sleepy Reader had a live show with. I can't remember the guy's name. He's had a live show with him before.
Garage Geek.
Garage Geek, was it? Okay. He had a live show with Garage Geek. I left a comment on it because one of the comics Garage Geek got was this is something I had never thought of. You remember Marvel's gatefold era, their gatefold recap era in the late 90s?
Oh
yeah,
Hello,
yeah.
yeah,
all.
yeah. Hello,
Well,
Chicago.
Garage Geek wasn't around for that era, but he's been buying back random back issues, and he got one, and he was all excited because he saw it was a fold-out cover. You know, he opened it up, and there was just an ad on the other side. And he was like, And I explained to him, if you remember that era, the reason Marvel started doing those gatefold covers was because of all the complaints that you couldn't follow a comic anymore. You know, everything's written for the trade. You can't follow a comic. So they decided to do the gatefold covers to sort of remedy those complaints. But then, of course, they didn't want to get rid of that. Was back when there was actually outside ads that gave them money. So they didn't want to.
But yeah, I remember Tom Brevoort was quite candid about it. That the real he explained it to us on Usenet that the real reason for the gate covers was to have extra ad space.
Well, no, there was no extra ad space, but they couldn't get rid of that ad, is what it was. Is that they couldn't just do a recap on the inside front cover because then they lose that ad space. So that's why it's not extra ad space; it's to keep the ad space they already have.
No, there was extra ad space, but that's because the comics went up from 32 to 40 pages with no extra story pages.
Right. There was that too. I remember that. I think that was in the early 2000s.
A
I
little bit before.
specifically remember doing the math on that, going, holy cow, that's going to take up so much of your collection as now ads if you continue. But anyway,
Well,
I was telling him that the reason why was to, the recap to give, to try to get people to stop from complaining that they, couldn't follow the comics anymore. But it ended up being too expensive and they still complained. It didn't stop the complaining.
No, they just with instead of having that gatefold recap page, they just did it on the first page.
Right. Which is kind of what they do now. And I never I've been noticing since I've been buying all these Chris Giarrusso cover comics this month, I don't even bother with the recap page. I'm like, I don't care. I'm like, I don't care to read this. It annoys me, first of all, that there's no splash pages anymore. And holy cow, those ads on the left are just ruining the comics. There was another one this week that I was just like, oh, stop it. I'll show it to you when we get to it, but I was just like, stop it. This is so poorly thought out. You can tell no one's paying attention to thinking out where the ads should go. They're paying no attention to it whatsoever, because it's just wrecked. But did you see? There was announced today. Chris has a Hulk 181.
I did see that. Yes,
he's been active on his social media announcing these covers. So I saw that one. I forget which Hulk it is, but it must be final order cut off soon, because I think it's a May cover. So we'll be ordering that one. I also ordered, Chris posted last week, I think it was after our show, I saw it. But I was able to order it in time. He's got, it's not the cover, but there's a Toxic Avenger pinup book coming out, which final order cutoff, unfortunately, was Monday. So didn't get to talk about it before final order cutoff. But he's got where once again, he does a official handbook of the Marvel Universe double page spread with all the Toxic Avengers characters.
Oh, okay.
So I'll show that to you when I get. I got my pre-order in, so I was like, let me see, is that because Chris, I saw it on his social media last week, and I was like, is final order cut off Monday? I better check, because I had already ordered my comics on my email, but I added that one. I was like, cool.
Yeah, I did see he also posted like all the covers.
That was nice.
Yeah.
He posted cool. A video of the original art for all the covers, but he didn't line them up all in a row. He kind of lined them up one by one. So
to show how they connect.
He had like the front cover and the back, and you could see how each one lined up with the next as he went through all the original art. That was a pretty cool little video.
Yeah, that was neat to see.
Mm-hmm. Here, I may as well show. Where's the one that drove me crazy? Oh, it's Power Man Timeless. Let me get myself big here. So we got the Power Man one. What do we got here? We got Power Man, Puck,
Red Wolf.
Who's that flying woman up top?
That is a Phoenix, but that's with Rachel Gray Phoenix.
Yeah, when she was in Excalibur. Yeah.
Okay. Quicksilver, Punisher, Rhino,
Rematut, Psycho Man, Red
Ronin.
Is that a Shogun Warrior? Red Ronin?
It's Red Ronin. Not the Shogun Warriors, but that was Marvel's own property.
Right. Female Red Guardian. Who's that green guy in the back?
Plant Man.
Plant Man.
Polaris, Quasar, and that little guy ahead of Red Ronin is Phastos from the Eternals.
Ah, okay.
Psycho Man.
Who's?
I think that's everybody.
I think that's everybody. Who's down here? Oh, let me get my hand out of the way.
Can't tell.
Yeah.
Oh, the Puppet Master.
Palladium, maybe?
Red
Radioactive Man?
That Paladin, the purple one?
Looks like it. Yeah, that's Paladin, yeah. Red Ghost coming out of the floor.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
one. In Pyro. Who's the one that looks like Iceman? That's not Iceman. Oh, is that Xavier? Looks like Xavier is
Astral form?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Professor
maybe.
X, yeah. Could be.
Professor X.
Yeah,
Who is,
starts with a P, Professor, yeah.
who's that guy with the eyes and the big weird hat there? That's magenta and blue?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Maybe one of the
Celestials. Person or part of the executioner?
That's not the executioner. That's Pluto.
Part of Pluto, okay.
Yeah, the Greek god.
I can't tell if that's part of him or something else.
Yeah.
I am not sure.
Looks weird.
But the comic itself, which had a previously, which I didn't read. The writers are Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly. The artist is Bernard Chang. The color artist is Marcelo Maiolo, Maiolo. The letterer is VC's Travis Lanham. And it was so any resemblance to Power Man I might know, strictly coincidental, because he's somehow cosmic powered Power Man. And I think he's got like Power Man Hulk inside him. And it's a cosmic story in an alternate universe where he shows up. That's what's his name? Apocalypse. No, yeah, that's Apocalypse getting his ass kicked by. There's some big bad supervillain who is, I don't know, power of the million exploding suns. But what's weird is
the Sentry.
Oh, is that the Sentry?
That's the Sentry's tagline, the power of a million suns.
Okay, yeah, I think they did mention the Sentry somewhere in here, but I wasn't 100% sure he was the Sentry. In this universe, this Sentry is killing everyone.
From here, he looks like Exodus, not Sentry.
But and there's dying Apocalypse at that time. The mutants are living on Mars in this universe. And it was not bad. And there's something called the Celestial Mind, which I think must be some celestial. Like I said, this is really cosmic. And like the Celestial Mind is trying to take over this woman. But the Celestial Mind talks like this. Where'd it go? See that big type? That's the Celestial Mind talking.
Okay.
Now, the problem is when you get a page like this where you flip over and it's like, it looks like an ad. And since there's an ad right next to it, it gets very confusing when you're reading it. And that happened a couple of times. Like, the one with all the type is the last page of the comic. But it looks like it's all part of some ad. So though I got to say this comic was so good, the ads in it ruined it. I mean, here's the big dramatic page turn. Let me show you this. This green guy right here is like Power Man Hulk. Somehow Power Man has got some Hulk-like thing in him. So he just let him loose. And the Sentry, this is like the climax of their fight. So then you turn the page, and he's like there's the big strike, and then like Sentry is like, yes. What does he say? You have oh God, no! You have no idea what you've done. I have cut from you your true power. This fight is over. Embrace your loss. And then you hear another voice. This is a victory. You are angry, terrible child. So the whole big dramatic moment leads up to Sentry cutting like Hulk Power Man out of Power Man. Like that's the big moment of this fight scene. And then you flip the page and it gives you an ad. And then the big. So it's like it ruins the page turn because this is the page. This is the left-hand page. So as you turn it, this is what you see instead of this, the dramatic moment. It just drove me crazy. Like, how do they not? How?
Yeah, everything you've mentioned about that comic sounds like it was plotted by a 7-year-old, and then Power Man hulks out, and then he punches the Sentry, but then the Sentry punches him, and like the Hulk comes out of him. That sounds like a 7-year-old.
It was at least well done. It was kind of fun, but it's like the ads all ruined the page.
Yeah,
turns. It's like
sure. The comic was plotted by a 7-year-old and edited by a 17-year-old.
Yeah, it was just bonkers.
And Marvel found out that we were talking shit about them, and they kicked Jared out of the stream.
Completely kicked him out. You see, it's the power of the mouse. That's what it has to be.
Once again, it always happens when I go over to a comment. When I go over to highlight a comment, that's when I don't know why. I don't know if it's coincidence, but whenever the times it's kicked me out is almost always been when I've gone to a comment. 62 Lefty Blues asks, isn't Sentry also the Void? That's the plot of Thunderbolts movie, but I think they must have mentioned something. Like I couldn't keep track of all the cosmic mumbo jumbo. Oh, and at least Power Man gives us a sweet Christmas.
Well, that's needed in the Power Man book.
Reading, sleepy reader.
Hey.
So, but like I said, it was, and like right in the middle. At least this one's on the, but just the use of type for the Overmind and then more type in the house ad. It's just like you're wrecking the use of the type. They should just move all the ads to the back and get them out of our way. I don't know why they don't. You've heard me complain. That's my biggest complaint about Marvel Comics. I think in this month I've been reading Marvel Comics is that the house ads ruin the reading experience.
I think Marvel should pay me to teach the editors to edit.
They should pay someone.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basic. I mean, they must have them all. Someone must think it's a good idea to ruin the reading experience. That's all I can, because they're all almost all of them are on the left. So that has to be on purpose. It's not willy-nilly. But it was a solid comic, even if the house ads ruined the reading experience.
How much are they paying Marvel editors nowadays?
I have zero idea. The editors always made decent money. The assistant editors did not.
But now the only editor who's making decent money is probably Braveheart.
Yeah. Well, I assume some of the other big boys are too. But I don't know what the royalty situation is, because like in the boom years in the 90s, they used to make bank on royalties. Because editors would get like a 1 or 2%. Oh, no, hold on, not royalty. What is it?
Incentives.
There we go.
Love checks.
Sleepy says, I completely agree about the house ads. It makes me happy I read them digitally without ads. Yeah, it just wrecks it. Like the only thing I don't like about digital is double page spreads lose their impact. But other than that, digital reading I find fine. and certainly getting rid of those house ads. I mean, they just wreck the reading. They do what every indie book does and put them in the back. They're house ads.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even know why they're not even. I am guessing that it's been quite some time since they've actually been able to sell an ad. Like,
Right.
I don't even know if there's a department actually selling ads at all.
I don't think there
And
is, because there aren't any.
yeah, there aren't ads, and you figure with how popular the comic book properties are. Yes, we understand that the movies do not equate sales of the books, but it's like too many house ads, not a single regular ad for anything. And it's like you can't find anyone that's going to buy one of your ads. Now, I haven't really checked the other comics. I don't
Yeah.
know if anyone else is selling ads,
No.
to be honest with you. But again, it just seems like you could use those pages to either give us more story if you don't have enough, if you don't have enough to cover the ads. I don't get it.
Yeah. Sleepy's got a question for us here. Didn't the incentives kick in and over 100K copies sold? If so, that would be a moot concept now. That's what I thought, but I remember hearing a few years ago that the incentives are lowered now. I don't know what they are. But I can see how they would lower them, because like 100K sold of a $1 comic is the same as 25K sold of a $4 comic. So I could see how they could afford to lower the incentives if they had, and I think they had. I don't know what they are, because I remember thinking that, doing the math the same way, going, man, because Marvel or DC would rake in even more money with a high cover price and a low circulation than they would with a low cover price and a high circulation. But I think they did actually lower the barrier for the threshold. There we go, for incentives. But once again, I don't know what it is, but I read that a few years ago.
Yeah, there are still something, because I do recall seeing an inker post like an image of something. It's like, oh, I just got he called it a residual check, but it's not. It was an incentive check. But he was like, oh, for I think a poster that he did that was still in circulation.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe the incentives are still out there, but
Yeah.
he was actually surprised to get something. So it's like, they're still there in some format.
Yeah. No idea what the numbers are, though.
No, I couldn't tell you. They didn't start giving them to colorists until after I was gone. So I don't even know. I don't even get copies of the books that they reprint that I've worked on.
At least
Even if
not from Marvel.
at
I've
least
heard
not from
Marvel.
Marvel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when I
I heard
ask for it.
I often see people showing their DC comps they get.
Yeah, DC has been pretty good about them, but I haven't. The stuff I did for DC was manga, and they're not reprinting any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then it's weird also to see that my work is being republished and now like Deadpool Classics is what they're calling it. So not only am I not getting the money, they're also calling me old, because now my books are listed as classics.
And I finished reading up this old back issue this week. This is number 32, February 2009. I think there was was there an article about the Spider-Mobile in here, or was this or was that part of the Elliot Brown thing? They had a little interview. I think it was from a panel, Green Lantern Then and Now, with Dan DiCarlo and Ethan Van Sciver, which was okay. I read it just a couple weeks ago. I don't remember a thing in it. it's just one of those panel transcription interviews about their experiences working on them. That one was okay. The Art of Joe Staten and Art Exhibition. I guess that happened somewhere. Then they had a whole article on Rom the Space Knight, which once again was all right. It was about, if you know the history of Rom the Space Knight, there was nothing kind of new in the article for me. I say that as if I didn't read the article in 2009. But there was no great revelations about Rom the Space Knight. They made it from a toy. It lasted longer than the toy. Bill Mantlo did a good job with it. So did Sal Buscema. Let's see, what else did we have?
Just released a Rom action figure.
Who did?
Marvel Legends, Hasbro, who technically owns the license for Rom.
They've been putting out the Rom omnibuses finally, too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
now it's the Epic Collections.
Is it?
Yeah, the omnibuses are done. So now they're doing the Epic Collections.
This was kind of interesting. Let me show you some of this. This was, let's see, Floating World Comics in Portland, Oregon held a benefit auction for Bill Mantlo in December 2007. So a bunch of comic book artists did Rom art. There's a Fred Hembeck. Who was that? Simonson. Oh, there's I guess there was a lot of stuff at that auction. Let's see what else we got here.
Hard to see. You're very pixelated on my screen.
Uh-oh. And there's no sense showing it. I'm probably not getting through. Yeah, I look fine on my screen, but that probably doesn't matter. But yeah, there was a nice little Rom. Then there was this Who's Who article. Sometimes, especially when you interview, so it was like an interview, there was like 4 people in this interview: Bob Greenberger, Marv Wolfman, Len Wein. I think that was it. I think there was a woman in it too. I forget who. She didn't speak a whole lot, but it was like they were all just being nice to each other. Most of them didn't remember anything. And it's just kind of like, it was like, the best article in here I found. Maybe it's because I knew him back in the day, but he was definitely the most interesting, was Elliot Brown. You knew Elliot, right, Wilson?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Elliot and I would have like long conversations every time he visit the office, just talking about stuff, the artwork, and at that time he was searching for, we never found it, was he had knee surgery, and he had taken photos of it, and he couldn't find the originals, and I don't know how it was connected to Marvel, that he was using something for it. But we would have long conversations about just stuff, photography, because he took tons of pictures. He was the one that basically took all the, I believe he's taken all the photo covers that Marvel had used over the years, or created those covers. Like when Spider-Man's taking off the mask and they took a picture, the John Byrne Doctor Doom cover, he created that. So, not only is he known for those intricate, practically 3D rendering, but drawn of like the inside of like Iron Man's costume,
the Punisher armory,
the armory where he broke down all those guns and stuff like that. So he was always fun when he visited the office.
Yeah, he also he and Vince Coletta took the photos for the Marvel Fumetti book. Oh look, I counted to 2 and got balloons.
There you go.
But like this was the most interesting one, because it was all about Elliot's, how because he was also an editor in the 80s. So he was an editor on the official handbook before I think Shooter fired him. And I think he started out running Stat Camera. And he was good friends with Mark Grunwald. So we talked a bit about Mark Grunwald. We get an old picture of John Romita and Marie Severin. Maury Koromoto, another Marvel bullpenner from the 70s.
Yeah, his own website. He had like old Marvel bullpen photos.
There's one of his drawings of a Sentinel, I guess. And this one was, like I said, I think he had some interesting things to say about his history and the history of comics and the history of, you know, him getting into doing these mechanical drawings for Marvel. Ralph Macchio and Jack Morelli. These are all his photographs too from his archive. From Jack Morelli. So there's a really nice article in here about Elliot. Where's his one of his most complicated ones, this Stiltman drawing. I think he had fun making up how that was supposed to work, even though it could never work. And he's even got pictures of this was mixing Mark Grunwald's ashes in with the black ink for a comic after Mark died. Let's see. What are they? I don't think it says.
It was used for a cover. I'm sorry, a poster, and for the miniseries, 12-issue miniseries that was repackaged for
Squadron Supreme.
Thank you, Squadron Supreme. I could not think of their name.
In fact.
So I really enjoyed that Elliot Brown article. That was a good one. Then it ended with, I liked this one too, on Dial H for Hero. A little, just sort of the history of Dial H for Hero. I didn't know a whole lot about. Oh, then a little something about inventions in Richie Rich. Quick little article, you know, just his robot made and stuff like that.
Ramona.
The Squadron Supreme. The Squadron Supreme Grunwald's Ashes is this one.
Ah, okay. Look at that.
First
Tested for DNA. Then they covered. You know what's funny? This is right when the first Iron Man movie comes out. So it's like, you know, this was a world before the MCU, really. And to think of, you know, it's hard to believe there was a world before the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it's gotten so big. But here is a little coverage of superheroes, fashion, and fantasy at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, May 7th through September 1st, 2008. And it's all about superhero costumes in movies and how that relates to costuming throughout history. So it's like, you know, this is probably one of the first times that, you know, the Met did a tie-in with a superhero movie kind of thing. It's funny to think how probably weird that was back in 2008. And of course, it ends up with this weird series I mentioned in the last one I read. What is the name of it? The Secret History of All American Comics Incorporated. The story of MC Gaines' publishing empire. And this is what if, instead of selling his share of All American publications to Harry Donenfeld and Jack Leibowitz in 1945, Max Charles Gaines had purchased National Periodical Publications. So it's an alternate history, pretending to interview the people who were there. And it's just weird. It's just like so geeky, alternate universe weird. I mean, the drawings are cool.
I really don't see,
but it's like
Max Gaines. I really don't see Max Gaines buying off Feldstein and Donenfeld. I mean,
it doesn't matter if you don't see it; they did it anyway.
No, okay. Now I want to see them do Max Gaines by Timely Comics instead.
No, it's fun. It's like they give you like a cliffhanger at the end, and I'm like, how is anyone supposed to get this cliffhanger? It's like something drastic happened in the 70s where the son of it's like who is it? Bill. It must be Bill. So Bill ended up in another board meeting. Yes, it's like board meeting cliffhanger drama, and I'm just like, really? Yes, they told him that they'd given him 3 years to turn things around, and now they had to take some action. He thought they were going to fire him, Skimmer. Rozakis. That would have been pretty drastic considering his father started the company. Business is business, and the bottom line is the only thing that counts. No room for sentimentality. Rozakis, but they didn't fire him. Skimmer. They told him they were sending in someone from the outside to oversee, evaluate, and recommend. Billy would remain president of the new company, but just like that, AA Comics had a new vice president publisher, Rozakis. And weren't we surprised when we found out who it was? Cliffhanger. And it's like, really? That's your cliffhanger? A new executive is coming in?
That's just someone like, I don't want to write articles anymore. I want to write stories. Give me something to write.
Yeah.
Here's a what if. Here's a what if in. I mean, I think we've all had the what if conversations in the sense of, what if DC did buy Marvel when they had the opportunity and stuff like that.
It's
But,
not.
This is wild to go to a time period and go, Well, I completely lost him.
What if Martin Goodman had closed down Marvel in 1957?
I think my whole internet just paused for a minute.
Yeah, you completely paused.
Yeah. What if Martin Goodman had closed Marvel in 1957? And then there would be a footnote about the Marvel editor Stan Lee, an obscure editor named Stan Lee. And he froze again. He froze again.
Yeah.
But speaking of what ifs, did you see that Mort Todd is doing more stuff with the Ditkoverse, basically? Creating a Ditkoverse?
Yes. Teaming up with nephew Ditko?
Yes.
Yep.
I saw that. I'm gonna buy the. He mentioned. I watched one of the interviews with him. He mentioned they're doing a. It's not Kickstarter, right? It's not. Is it Indiegogo?
It might be. I didn't see which one.
I know it's not Kickstarter. It might be Indiegogo. Okay. But he also mentioned they're going to be getting them into comic shops, so I'll buy them when they get them into comic shops.
Oh, that's cool.
It's on Indiegogo. Here it is. Steve Ditko's Heroes and Monsters.
And I think they're putting out like 4 comics.
Yeah, 161% of the flexible goal reached.
That's good.
Right. So Indiegogo does the flexible goals ones.
Whatever that is.
Yeah, it just means that no matter how much you make, even if you don't make your gold, you make the money anyway. Okay. Where for Kickstarter, you set a goal in mind. Let's say 6,000. You hit 6,000 or over, you're fine. You get to keep the whole money. But if you're like $1 less than the gold, then everyone gets their money back, kind of a thing. Where Indiegogo makes it where whatever money you can still set that amount, that 6,000 goal. But if you only get 4,000, you get the 4,000 because you can still work with that kind of money anyway. So that's the flexible one.
And I know that's one of the reasons people set their Kickstarter goals low.
Right, because you want it to read at least it being successful.
Right, that's the other.
And
Kickstarters sold out in 20 minutes or whatever. That can be part of your marketing.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Here it is. So yeah, they're treating this like a shop, so almost. So you can choose which comics and which tchotchkes
Yeah.
to make your own bundle. So yeah,
You can
probably this
buy
is
one comic or all 4 comics. Or
yeah, or you can buy a T-shirt or a pin.
I saw the Mr. A pin.
Yeah. So yeah, the comics are Mr. A, Fantastic Giants, Static, and Avenging World.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they
There's
make
the
the Mr. A business cards where it's just a black and white card.
yeah, and there's a Ditcoin.
Oh, that's right. A physical coin they were making, right? The DIT
Mm-hmm.
coin. I remember them talking about it. I don't think it was on there when I looked yet.
Amazing.
Also got some cards with Mortat art featuring Ditko designs. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, if you're into Ditko, this is a very interesting.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
The way Tit Goblin right here mentioned the new paint markers you got look, Jared, look neat. I just before we came on here, I posted a art supply unboxing. This right here, oops, see this right here, $275
Wow.
worth of art supplies, and the paint markers he's mentioning is I got a bunch of these Montana paint markers, acrylic paint markers with acrylic paint refills. Which I wonder if I could refill it with regular acrylic. Or do I have to use their refill? Well, I'll find that out. But where are their refills? Because they're here. Like here's a marker, and here is a refill. And the refill, it's not particularly big. 25 milliliters, and that refill cost $8.81. You get a tube of nice acrylic and water it down yourself, maybe. So I'm gonna try that.
That's what I'm wondering. I'm wondering how watered down that might be.
Yeah. What is the actual? I'm gonna figure that out at some point. But I don't know if you've. This is the first time I'm trying Montana brand. I never noticed them before. About 10 years ago, they started making like artist grade spray paint. They suddenly popped up in all the art catalogs I got, and with spray paint, because spray paint kind of became like a legitimate artist medium, not a graffiti medium kind of thing. So that's where I first saw the brand. And I think these paint markers came out of that too, because graffiti writers like paint markers too. So that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, I don't think I actually ever noticed acrylic markers even mentioned until like this year. Like I don't even know how long they existed.
All of a sudden, last year, acrylic paint markers, cheap acrylic paint markers were everywhere.
Yeah.
Like I got a couple of different types. Like now, just last year, Sharpie started making acrylic paint mark. Matter of fact, in here, let's see if I can pull them out. These are brand new. First time I've seen them. Copic acrylic paint markers.
Oh wow. Okay.
So this is new, and these are not cheap. Like I can get a I've been using like the Sharpies are not particularly cheap either, but you can get like a set of 24 acrylic paint markers that are probably made in China for like $20. And these ones are 6 different colors, and this was $20 for 6 paint markers. And I think the Sharpies are like $20 for like 12 paint markers. So even the Sharpies are more expensive than the cheapo ones. So, but You can go and look at my art supply haul and see all that stuff. I made it like that. I made it. Got it this afternoon. Had to call up Dick Blick just to make sure, because they charged me twice.
Really?
But not really. It turns out, because what had happened was, it turns out what they do is, when you place the order, they send in an authorization to your credit company to make sure that they're making the money good. But my card company, sends me a text saying, you just made a $275 order with Dick Blick. But they don't actually charge you until they ship. But there was one thing on my list that was out of stock. So I guess they charged me like $266. But that came through as a second charge. So I had a charge for $277, like $266. I was like, oh, that's not good. So I called them up and they explained it to me. I was like, oh, I thought it might be something like that, but I wasn't taking any chances.
Yeah, exactly. You just don't need it to mess up on you.
No. But do you get your art supplies online, or do you go to the store?
Lately, I haven't been getting anything in bulk.
Yeah.
I've been picking up some pens here and there while I've been doing the sketch cards. So it's like, and funny story about that too. I was starting to do an order on Dick Blick. And I was like, okay, which ones do I need? What's the numbering system? And I couldn't find a particular one. It's like, no, I've gotten the fine ones before, and I go to check to where I usually keep the used ones, and it's like, all right, so these, okay, so it does go to 0.005, and it's like I remember doing a batch order of them, and I had put them away, and I opened the drawer where I put them away, and there's still the batch order. So it's like I don't even need to make an order. The last time I made an order, I did such a big batch
But you
that
still got them.
I still have a few of them. So I realized is that I made a batch order, I put the batch away, and then I had one of those pen holders, and I have been putting them all in the pen holders. And then as I used them up and it's like, okay, this is done, it goes into a different uh bucket that it's like, okay, I'm going to try to refill these, and I never do. And so it's like, all right, so I end up, still have this group that it was like part of on the holder. And then when I was like, oh, I think I am out of a particular pen, I completely forgot that I still have the batch to look up. So it's like, oh, I don't need to make this order. And the last few supplies I've been getting, I've been kind of like playing around with what can I find in Five Below, because there's always a stack of art supplies. I'm always tempted, and I do give into it because, like, oh, for $5, let me try this item. And so I have a easel, a wooden easel that I'm using now for the cards, because it's just the right small size for me to put on my art table, so I can still keep my art table flat, have my markers and stuff like that on it, and then work on this easel, and just have it because it's a big enough easel that's right in front of my face, so I'm not hunching over. So that worked out really good for me. And then I bought a few pens from them, and it's like I'm enjoying them, and some alcohol markers, because they have a set that's just the gray colors. I was like, oh, this is great. I can just use this, like, because when you buy a set of markers, you usually get that, a couple of grays here and there and one black.
Right.
This was able for me to get like 18 variation of grays, not only warm grays but cool grays, and there's usually always a black as well. So it's like, oh, I can use these as I'm going along. So it's almost easier to just get, the Five Below markers and test those out. And I've been I think the next time I'll go there, I would get the acrylic ones to just play around with some inexpensive acrylic ones to see if I like it, and then I go for a larger stack. But it's been quite a while since I've had to get any supplies.
You know what's weird about acrylic markers? I bought like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 sets of acrylic markers. I've yet to see a good red. The reds
Oh,
seem to
okay.
be always a little orangey. There's no like naphthol red
Huh.
like that. I don't know why. I don't know why. But Blick also, these ones, I just got a bunch of these. This complete set. These are Blick's new pigment markers. So they're little black markers, except they're pigment. Like markers are either dye based or pigment based, and most like alcohol markers like Copics are dye based. And if they're dye based, that means they're probably not going to last forever. Dyes are fugitive. They could last for a while. They could be gone. Like all the stuff I've done in the last 10 years is fine. That doesn't mean it's going to be fine in 50 years.
Right.
But pigment-based stuff is more light fast. And like the matter of fact, I got 2 new ones. I now got a red and yellow of these Pantones. These are pigment-based. So the color will stay around, unlike the dye ones. And these are now pigment-based black ones. Other companies now make, even like Pentel makes pigment-based ones now. But I want to try all the different sizes. I hardly ever use the tiny sizes, so I don't know why I ended up getting. You know what it is? Sometimes when you make an order at like places about Dick, it takes a while. It's like you're looking at stuff for like 2 weeks, sometimes a month. And so I think this was only like $12 for the set. But since then, I also tried out one of like here's one of them. I've been using this one for all the tiny drawings. So I decided to throw 5 new ones of these on. So I threw 5 of these. I threw 5 of the next size down, 0.5, and I threw 5 of the brush ones. So I'm like, well, those are the 3 I like. I probably won't use these other 5 in the 0.2, 0.25. I hardly ever use those tiny ones. I'll have to give them away to students. Good evening, Comic Crack.
Hello.
Let me show you the other Chris Girusso. Because only 2 Chris Girussos this week. So let's see what was their. The first one cost $4, and this one is also $4. This is Exceptional X-Men. See if I can go big and show you this. Exceptional X-Men. We got She-Hulk,
Sasquatch, Sandman, Kitty Pryde.
Who's the guy in black in the end? Shrike or somebody?
I
Shroud.
think it is Shroud. Shadow Cat, Kitty Pryde.
Is that the Shaper of Worlds?
Oh yeah.
And Kitty Pryde?
Yeah, she's there because she's Shadow Cat.
Shadow Cat. There you go. There's the name I couldn't remember.
Sentinel.
No,
Rogue.
that's the Kree. That's the Kree.
Rogue.
Oh yeah. No, that's the. Oh, those are the Shaw Sentinels, though, from the New Mutants. They're not very good.
Is that Cersei up there?
Cersei, Rogue, Rocket
Raccoon.
What's the little yellow car?
Shield, maybe?
Yeah.
Shield card.
Shield Arrow
The
card.
Kree Sentry.
Yep. That's
Shanna.
Ronan the Accuser.
That looks like Sprite below Sandman. There's Shocker. Yeah.
Shocker.
Scorpion.
Yeah.
Who's that little guy by himself under Sandman, did you say?
Sprite from the Eternals.
Ah, okay.
Sabretooth.
Some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
Always fun to identify them. Let's see who did this one. Once again,
as one of 5 people who like the Eternals, I know Sprite and Fastos are.
Once again, we get an ad, then the splash page is the recap. Then after the recap, we get an ad. It's like, come on, why are you ruining my comic experience so badly? Why, we have an ad on page 2? It's just kind of crazy. Then this story is weird. Mr. Sinister. There's who's doing this story? Where's the once again it's the eternal search for the credits in a Marvel comic. It's not early on. Was it on the first page? Did I just miss it? Oh, there we go. The writer is Eve L. Ewing. The artist is Carmen Canero. The color artist is Nolan Woodard. And the letterer is once again VC's Travis Lanham. But this is just such a weird story. This is like deep into X-Men lore story. Because what Mr. Sinister is up to here is there's some random X-Men whose name I don't know. Let's see. They say his name somewhere. Alex. I don't know who he is. But his power, I think, is that he makes people comfortable and reveal their inner selves to them. Something like that.
What?
Someone was watching Lucifer. It's like, can I make that into a power? What's your desire?
Something. So Mr. Sinister kidnaps him and turns him hooks him up to this giant machine, which he calls empathy. The way people blubber about when they're near you, confessing their innermost truths like schoolgirls around a campfire. So Mr. Sinister wanted to see what that was like because he can't feel empathy. So he just built this giant machine to make him be able to feel empathy. Oh, I'm quite proud of this little rig. This is Mr. Sinister. It's essentially an empathy engine. And you are the piston, the oil, the spark plug. The right metaphor will come to me eventually. In any case, Varate is taking in countless units of... I don't know what this genetic... He turned this mutant into an empathy machine for reasons I don't quite understand. Except I think he wants to use this to somehow remake mutants. Like, remember how in the last X-Men story when they were living on that island, they couldn't die, they would just be reborn somehow with some machine? I think he's trying to create his own version of that machine, as near as I can tell. Meanwhile, to cover his tracks, he put a duplicate of whoever that super mutant is. And the rest of the story is this mutant not quite being able to pass. It's like everybody notices he's not the right. So the rest of it is just, like I said, I don't even know these mutants, but they were pretty interesting. It was pretty well done. Like, I have zero idea who that is. But it was pretty well done, and eventually, they're out on the town. I think this is really aimed at women readers. I could kind of tell that might have been what they were, whether consciously or not. I think that's what they were going for with this, because this issue was all about the relationships between the characters. It wasn't there was no real fight scene. It wasn't about, when it's aimed at dudes, everything's about the battles, everything's about the fights. But this was really more about the relationships between the characters. So, and it was pretty well done. But it's not for me. So, but it was all right. It didn't get too ruined by the terrible ad placements. Let's see if there's any, I think they did okay. You know what it is? I don't think they put any ads on the dramatic page turns because there were no real dramatic page turns like in the other one. But it was a solid read. What issue is this? Number 8. Once again, that's the weird thing about them renumbering anything is that I have no context with the comics anymore. Like when it's, Uncanny X-Men 340. I may not have read it in 140 issues, but Uncanny X-Men 340 means something to me in the context of the X-Men existing. Exceptional
Right.
X-Men number 8 means nothing to me. It may as well not have a title and a number. Well, it should have a title so I know who it is, but exceptional doesn't mean anything. Like, who are the exceptional X-Men compared to the X-Men? I don't know.
Right.
How do they fit into X-Men lore? I don't know. But if it was like, X-Force number 176, I'd at least have a context for it. But I think that's what renumbering things has done to us longtime readers. It has stripped us of our context with the comics. That was the last emotional tie I had with Marvel and or DC Comics, was the literal number of the comic.
Yeah, it's like even though I didn't read it, when I picked up Spider-Man #1, it did nothing for me. I was actually, I think, more upset that it's like, why are they renumbering it? They just had a series that, yes, it was an Amazing Spider-Man group of books that a lot of people did not like, because I saw more dislike for that title than likes, and then all of a sudden, and there was no fanfare as far as I was aware.
No,
That it was
that's
like,
what was
boom,
strange.
here's Spider-Man #1. Wait, what do you mean Spider-Man #1? And it was like, it's Amazing Spider-Man, and it's now back to issue #1, and I felt more upset that existed that way than just to, are they going to relaunch it every time they do a new storyline? Because at that point, stop doing monthly and start putting out graphic novels.
Nah, that'll strip them of
and
that
do
monthly
that.
money. That's never happening.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, but it's just like, why are you bothering with the numbers at this point if you're going to
Yeah,
keep
that is
playing with
weird.
them? Mhm.
Do you have any emotional tie to the numbers, Paolo? Do you have any? Does it make you?
Well,
Because your stuff were all in like collected volumes.
Yeah, but as an amateur historian, the numbers help me place
There is that
the
too.
comics in their proper context.
Yeah.
Now, if you tell me, well, this is Miss Marvel volume 7, number 4, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to investigate more to put it in context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's why a
and I
lot of
like.
times now I'll put the year it came out rather than like volume numbers. Volume numbers, they don't even put volume numbers on them.
Yeah, I used to really like large numbers on books, and when the Phantom movie came out, one of the first weeks they did was they gave out Phantom comics, which is like,
Uh-huh.
who's printing Phantom comics? I didn't even know they were still in print. And of course, it was, they brought in some books from overseas, and it was the first time I saw a book that had, an over 1,000 number system to it. And it was like, that blew my mind that, one, they were still printing Phantom comics, and two, that it was that high number. And we don't have anything at that time or even still at that high number. And it was like, that was kind of, for me, I felt that was kind of messed up that we don't have these things in the high numbers, because, they keep that relaunch, that, we want that issue #1 bump. And it's like, and then calling it legacy, it's like, that just feels like homework at this point. Where it's like, oh, how can we, find
When
what
it
we're looking for?
when it comes to adventure strips, those are a lot more end up being a lot more famous outside North America. Because of course they're not read in the newspapers.
Right.
The guys who hold the rights to publish to distribute them in the newspapers and ended up publishing them in magazines. Usually the cheap variety, black and white, 32 pages weekly. This month this week it's the Phantom. Next week it's Rip Kirby. The following week it's Prince Valiant. But to a lot of people who are older than me, they ended up reading a lot of newspaper strips. So it's kind of not a surprise that those become a lot more of a success story outside North America. That's why they have the Australian Phantom magazine and the Indian one and the Norwegian one, and those just keep going and going and going, and they create their own stories.
Yep. Let's see. 62 Lefty Lee says, "Come on, Jared. You know all the X-Men are exceptional." Exactly. How can I tell which book it is? They're all exceptional. And Comic Crack is being facetious here. He's joking. Is X-Men some sort of newfangled trans comic? Keep woke politics out of my comics.
Yes, it is, Crack. It's right there in the name. They're the X-Men.
They used to be longer. Men, now they're not.
Speaking of legacy, happy Superman Day.
Oh, that's right. Dean Haspiel sent out a special. You know, it's funny. I have Dean Haspiel's email newsletter as one of my newsletters. And it usually comes out weekly, monthly. I don't even know what. But his last newsletter, he told the story of how back when he was in college, and he was in college with me, G.G. Allen played on campus.
Really?
One night. I didn't know about. I don't even think I knew who G.G. Allen was at that time.
Right.
For those of you who don't know who G.G. Allen was, I guess he was a punk rocker, but he was crazy. He was a lunatic, did all sorts of lunatic things. And like when Dean was telling the story, he was like, "Oh, I got to go see this lunatic." And Dean at the time was on crutches because he'd just broken a leg and an ankle and whatever. And G.G. Allen started kicking him in his broken leg. So it's like Dean's friend had to fight off G.G. Allen, and they were throwing things at G.G. Allen to get Dean the hell out of there. And then we go from like last week. So today he sent out like a brief, "Hey, it's Superman Day" newsletter. That was just a brief one. I just found funny the juxtaposition between the G.G. Allen story and the Superman Day email.
Right.
He was the embodiment of rock and roll. That's what G.G. said about himself. That's for sure. Yeah, I have a couple friends who are G.G. Allen fans. They like him for the comedic aspect of being G.G. Allen. But I always say, G.G. Allen has this one song that goes, "Shove that warrant up your ass, catch me if you can, and kiss my ass." I'm like, only G.G. Allen was a genius enough to rhyme ass with ass. You usually don't see that in songwriting. Usually, most songwriters, they don't rhyme the word with the same exact word, but not G.G. Allen.
Sounds like a rebel.
Oh, he was a lunatic.
Oh yeah,
He'd
I've
throw
heard
his
stories.
crap at you from the stage. He would take a dump and throw it at the audience. Yeah, lunatic. Matter of fact, that's the one who. Where do I have it? My goodness, I think I just moved it. It's not right where it always was. Who? Girls, give me some. Oh yeah, poetry. Oh, what's his name? Our viewer who died in the house. Oh my goodness, I can't believe his name's not coming to me. Who he did the comic biography of G.G. Allen.
Right.
The documentary Hated is so good. Oh my goodness, I can see I have his other comic over here. I think that one's still Captain. King Spoet. There we go. King Spoet. He did a cartoon biography of G.G. Allen right before he died. So so I have a G.G. Allen comic. That King Spo, it did. Can't believe I forgot King Spo's now. I have his real name on Facebook. He's still a Facebook friend, so I have to look it up. There we go. And the Spoets. Here's a weird thing I got this week. Yeah, he played with him. I think from what I remember him saying, I have a G.G. Allen coloring book. I can't remember if he played with him or his brother Merle. I'll have to look at the G.G. Whoops, Mike. Here's a weird thing I got this week. By the way, I really like this drawing. Chester Brown by Frederick Byrne Kohlhart. How do you say an O with a slash through it, Paolo?
I think it's supposed to be read like in German. Kohlhart.
Kohlhart. This is from University.
I had the Niels Olgersson book, and they taught me how to read Swedish phonemes, but now I've forgotten.
This is from University Press of Mississippi, and I think it was. I haven't read it. The introduction. One copy for the shelf and one copy for him. It's like, of course, I'm the one who gets it. But said it was some guy's thesis on autobiographical cartoonists and Chester Brown being so it's a concise overview of the renowned comics creator behind Yummy Fur, Ed the Happy Clown, I Never Liked You, Louis Reel, and Paying for It. So it's a nice overview of all his comic work. A sort of academic overview of Chester Brown's comic work. The back is all footnotes. And Roy told me he thought the first 4 books weren't comic related, but about Mobius. So it's the same sort of thing from University Press of Mississippi about Mobius. So the funny thing was, I forget someone mentioned that on my weekly video. They're like, oh, I got the one before it. It's about Mobius. I was like, oh, cool. Then I went and looked on my Amazon wish list, and I had already put the Mobius one on my wish list. I was like, oh, I knew about it, just didn't know I knew about it. You're probably right. Maybe it was Earl. Yeah, it could have been. Eric P. G.G. Allen is the name of a woman trying to stamp out gay people in DC Comics Snagglepuss series. Did not know that. That's that new one, right? Has anyone seen Paying for It, the movie yet? His ex-girlfriend Suk Yin Lee directed it. I did not see that, no. I do want to check that out. Paying is an adaptation of his book Paying for It, which is all about his relationship with prostitution. So I look forward to this one. I liked Paying for It. I generally like Chester Brown stuff. Has either of you two ever read Yummy Fur?
Nope.
The name is familiar, but I don't think I ever read it.
Rose again.
I've never been that. I don't know. I don't think I've been interested in Yummy Fur. Chester Brown's probably out of those more famous indie guys from the late 90s, early 2000s. There's probably the one I know the least about.
Yummy Fur is where I first discovered. Comic Crack says, I think everyone should read Yummy Fur. It's so good. It is. And it's just so crazy. It's like, it started out like, I think Vortex Comics originally published it, but they published it originally from his mini comics. And it started out as just these little stories. And then it kind of, he tied it all together into this one big stuff. Skydiving Frankenstein was one of my favorites. Skydiving Frankenstein skydived into the alien ship, saved them, and then left. And that was like that was the whole extent of Skydiving Frankenstein. But he certainly saved the day. I'm going to open this ink while we sit here.
Yeah, I just took a search at the covers, and it's like, I don't remember ever seeing these on the stands anywhere.
Yeah, it was not it was popular amongst us weirdo small press indie guys of the 80s, but wasn't particularly well known. Of course, Comic Crack knows it. Yes, Vortex Comics. The first couple of issues collected previously released self-published comics. And I think someone turned me on to it too. Someone was like, here, you got to check these out. And I went out and found them for myself. Yellow. These are the Pantone inks to refill the Pantone markers I just got. Yellow and red. This is the kind of red I haven't found in acrylic markers. All the reds are more orangey or scarlet. I don't know why that is. That I think because it might be because to have coverage, they have white in them, a lot of the colors, in order to have some opacity to them. Canadian, we have to know. Yeah. He's Canadian. One of the, let's see, who were the Seth, Yummy Fur, Chester Brown, and Joe Matt, who wasn't Canadian but was living in Canada. They were sort of the big three autobiographical cartoonists of the late 80s, early 90s, and beyond.
Yeah, I know nothing of any of them. Only thing that existed for me at that time was Marvel and DC and Ninja Turtles. And Boris the Bear. I think was
there you go.
Indie. That was indie. And then I know I have some indie comics that only may have printed like one issue, and I never seen them again. There was a few of those. And some of them were like movie adaptations as well. Like I found out years later, oh, this was based on this particular movie, and they happened to put out a comic book that was like a prequel. And anything else? The 3D books for a while was a thing with me. That I would find these odd 3D books, and whether or not it was a known character or something like that was something for a while too.
That just reminds me, I didn't see it. I remember seeing it was coming out, but I didn't get one. But Randy Gentile showed one on his Instagram. They put out an issue of Jack Kirby's Black Panther in 3D.
Really? Huh.
Yeah, just like last week, the week before. I was like, I didn't order that. Comic Crack says, I have a Charlie Brown bootleg that trio did, but they didn't credit themselves. I can see why, but I never knew they did that. Seth, Joe, Matt, and Chester Brown. By the way, the guy who did this illustration is credited as cover illustration by Anthony. It's either Hare or Hare, H-A-R-E. Never heard of him, but I really like that. I think that's a nice illustration. You captured something nice with it. Good stuff. Good stuff. What? And of course, facsimile of Fantastic Four #4 out this week. The revival of the Submariner.
When he was brought back.
What was that?
No, when they brought him back and they found him
Oh yeah,
living in the
human torch cutting his beard. I
yeah,
always found that
shaving off his
visual,
beard. Uh-huh.
shaving off his beard with a flaming finger. Kirby outdid himself with that one.
Completely. It was funny because it's like they did weird stuff with their powers that you wouldn't think
Yeah.
about. Because I remember when Ben would he had broke someone's door and then he fused it together because he put so much pressure squeezing the two parts of the door together. It basically welded the door with no heat. And as a kid, you're like, all right, yeah, that could probably happen. Not thinking, no, if it was a metal door, it would have completely crushed it, or any kind of material would completely
Right.
crush it. But it's like, nah, I could accept that. Sure, Johnny has the
Sounds good to
control.
me.
Yeah, Johnny has the control to cut somebody's hair without setting the whole head aflame. Amazing.
It's been fun getting these. You know, I think that, like I said, I think they're going to issue 12, and I'll go to issue 12 too. Why
Yeah.
not? I'll keep going if they keep putting out Fantastic Four facsimiles. It'll be like I'm living in the 60s. 62 Lefty Blues has the lineup for us. University of Mississippi Press. First 4 issues were Chris Claremont, George Perez, Ben Catchor, Howard Cruz, Mobius, and Chester Brown. I picked up Mobius. Like I said, I've got the Mobius on my Amazon wish list. I saw it. Like even before that one came out, I just happened, someone must have said something about it. Who's Ben Catchor? I don't think I know that name.
Name's not
But I'd get the George Perez one. Does anybody recognize the Ben Catchor name?
No.
Maybe he's not a comics guy. More than 4. Okay.
American cartoonist and illustrator, best known for the comic strip Julius Canepi?
Is it an old one?
No.
It must be.
Yeah,
born
in 1951.
Okay, so not that old. But who do you think, if you were to hear the phrase known for the comic strip right now in 2025, somebody current, who would you think of?
Known from the comic strip.
It's like no one's known for comic strips anymore. Maybe still somebody like Gary Trudeau. He's still got a once a week comic strip.
The newspaper that my dad buys is reprinting Peanuts and Mafalda.
Comic Crack says, I think he was a Raw contributor. I think he did some comics as well. 62 says they have conversations with Rick Veitch in the previews for June. Okay.
Okay. Ben Catcher strips. So Julia's nipple, unless the K is not silent.
Yeah, I you know what? I didn't even think of making the K silence. That's why I pronounced it.
Knipple.
But I can't think of a single like
Knippy?
Knipple. That's an L.
Oh.
That's why it's so to make it sound Jewish.
Right. And there's another one called the Diary Restaurant that he did.
The cardboard valise. Hotel and Farm and Shoehorn Technique. Okay.
Went to Parsons.
Wow. 62 says the 3D Black Panther was $12.99. Maybe I did see it in the final or cutoff and said, I ain't paying no $13 for a 3D. Now, I think I have a vague memory of that happening now.
Yeah, I don't see the 3D experience being $12.99 when 3D books are usually the ones you got packed with the dollar books.
That may be what happened. I saw it and went, oh, I didn't see the physical comic. I saw it on the list of comics. I probably looked it up to see what it was and went, oh, no, thank you.
Yeah. I don't think that 70s technology, 50s technology is really worth the $12.99.
The problem I always had with 3D comics is you can't really read them like a regular comic. Because when you move
Yeah.
your eyes, the 3D effect kind of goes. So it's like you have to look at it, get the 3D effect, move to the next panel, wait for the 3D effect to kick in, read. It was like they were fun to look at. Ray Zone. He did all
Yeah.
those 3D books in the 80s. Do you remember that name? Ray
Yes. There
Zone?
was like, was it an article or a YouTube video not that long ago, which means any time between now and 5, 10 years ago, that there was an article or something about the 3D books, and I didn't realize that most of them were all done by the same person.
Right. And that just sounds like such a pseudonym too. I don't know if it was his real name or not, but I always was like, Ray Zone. That's not a real name. But if you bought 3D books in like the 80s or early 90s, you probably would have seen his name.
Yeah.
Ray Zone. And any 3D books make it over to Portugal, Paolo?
Not the American ones.
No. Oh, you had some
Although,
other countries do them?
yeah, they probably do. It's not a gimmick that I pay any attention to.
Yeah. I used to, in the 80s, I used to buy the indie, because it was always indie books that were 3D. And he says, yeah, Comic
Yeah.
Crack says he did some stuff at Blackthorn for the 3D line, didn't he? Yeah. I have one called Merlin Realm that's really damn good. I might have that one. I think I do. Let me check my database and see.
I remember there was Married with Children did a 3D one. I'm pretty sure I have a Superman, a 3D Superman book, an old one too. But it might be one of the reprints of like the older Silver Age or maybe even Golden Age Superman in 3D that was re-released in the 80s.
Let's see. I do not see Merlin Realm on my list, but that doesn't mean I don't. I could. So some of the weird one shots I don't always have in my database.
Merlin Realm 3D #1 from Blackthorn, October 1985.
I definitely remember it, and I remember the cover, so it might be in here somewhere. I'll have to check so I think I've got them all in one place, but I haven't seen it in so long. I'm not sure. But he was the guy who did like all the 3D books for the indie stuff in the 80s, Ray Zone. Ray Zone.
Written by Mark Harris, art by Nicholas Koenig. Inks by Aiken and Garvey.
Ah. I always liked them as inkers.
Mm-hmm.
Thought they were a good team. A good team. Let's see, what else do I have here? This was weird in that this is issue 3 of Mine is a Long Lonesome Grave, which it says, I think, concludes next issue. So that, I guess, makes it a 4-issue miniseries. But we got a new artist this issue. It's like, how do you get a new artist in the middle of a 4-issue mini? Oni Press. The new artist is, I don't know if this is a real name either. Man House. Maan is the first name. Which I don't know if that's going to be Mon or Man or Me. I don't know. And House is the last name. Let me see. Who's the copyright on this? Let's see if I can figure that out. Maybe it's owned by the writer or something. No, it's copyright 2025. Justin Jordan and Robert Christopher Sheehan, who I think was the artist in the first 2 issues. He must have been. But I just find it I find it weird when an indie book changes artists after 2 issues. He did a good job, but I signed up for the other artist. And indie books don't usually do that. That's what you get from Marvel or DC. But this one is the story. Nice creepy cover too. This is the story a guy who got out of jail after 20 years, went back home briefly because he had no reason to go back home. But then some old enemies popped up, and one of them put a curse on him, where he has to either kill the old enemy to remove the curse, or he's going to die in a couple of days. I don't know if I'd want to put that curse on someone, especially someone who knows what that curse is. Like, I can see putting that curse on someone who doesn't know what it is, but this guy knows what it is. So you're asking this badass to come and kill you. That seems like there's got to be a better way to get rid of him. Especially since like one of the local guys who he's got problems with sent like 10 guys with guns to kill him, and they all ended up dead. Like, this isn't the guy you want to put a curse on, where the only way he can get rid of the curse is to kill you. That seems like basic logic to me. Mm-hmm. Did you read any comics this week, Paolo?
Nope. But I hear there's a new Youngblood.
Ah. They're putting out Youngblood #1 remastered.
Remastered. What does that mean exactly?
I think they're recoloring it and re-lettering it and maybe redrawing it in certain places.
Okay.
I'm way too much of a Youngblood #1 purist to want to get that.
Right. That's the reason.
Did you pick up Youngblood #1 when it came out, either of you?
No. I did. I picked up all those first Image books.
I got I got the Brazilian editions of Savage Dragon, Cyberforce, and Wildcats. I only got Spawn #2.
I got when they all came out. I got them all when they first came out. I got those. I got the what did they do? I also picked up stuff that had come out around that time period, even celebrating that Image was doing something, kind of a thing. And they had like special books come out. I remember one of them had like a silver cover, and I think it was kind of like a previewish kind of book. And I remember another one that was a black and gold cover, and I think one of the titles was Tribe.
Okay.
That an early
Larry
Image
Stroman.
book. That was the Larry Stroman one. I think that was an Image one as well.
Yeah.
I remember picking that up.
The story I've heard about that book, and this may be apocryphal, I don't know if it's true, was that Larry Stroman, like a lot of the Image guys, made so much money off of the first issue that it took him a while to get the other issues out. Because there was more motivation to spend that money than to work. I have no idea if that's true or not. I just remember hearing that.
And it's like, and at that time I was picking up the Malibu comics, so I know I was getting like Malibu Sun and stuff like that.
So you may have had the first appearance of Spawn on the back of Malibu Sun.
It is very well possible I had it, but
possibly
again,
even the one with the mixed up magenta plate.
Yeah, it's very well possible I may have had that, but at the same time, I probably treated the Malibu Sun like the DC Direct and Marvel Age, where it's like, well, Marvel Age I kept, but the other ones, the ones that were the kinds made to throw away, There's a
You
good
threw them
chance I
away.
made it through it. I have stumbled on a few Malibu Suns over the years, and and I've stumbled onto stuff like the very first newsletter. Um, oh, what was their names? I think they were called Platinum, or they were trying to be called Platinum Comics. It was when those when those they were kind of like Image guys that they left Marvel and try to form their own companies, and so they were trying to do stuff. I think Scott Roseman, I forget the other two guys, and like I even have like a newsletter from them, but I don't think they ever published anything.
Yeah.
But it was a big deal that they had left, um, the comic industry, so to speak, Marvel, and to start their own thing. And the only thing they ever did was the Cowboys versus Aliens.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
It
but
was
it was Scott Mitchell Rosenberg from Malibu. Yeah.
right. So it's like so when they left and it was like they made that announcement. Like I got onto their mailing list. I used to get Christmas cards from them, but it was like that they were contacting everybody to sign contracts to like bring them books, and the only ones that ever got to the movies was the uh, was the Cowboys and
Ellie.
Aliens,
Yeah.
and we know how great that went. So
Yeah.
Wasn't Rosenberg involved with Legendary Pictures? Because they also put out a line of comics, and Matt Wagner did a thing called Geist Hawk.
Ah.
that I don't recall.
No, I don't remember
Yeah,
that one either.
I
yeah,
don't remember that one.
yeah. It was a 4-issue miniseries. They were all prestige format.
Wow.
Written by Wagner, art by
Oh.
Simon Beasley. I think they did a second miniseries, but they couldn't afford Beasley's rates now.
Yeah. Whoops.
Let me see.
No,
'Cause
it's
I think they
funny.
put out other comics, Legendary Comics.
I had like no interest in that Image stuff when it came out, but somewhere like 4 to 6 months later, like when issues where there was like 4 or 6 issues out of stuff, I decided to give some of them a try. And at that time, of course, that was during the boom years of comics, so it was the boom years of comic shops. So there was probably 4 or 5 comic shops in the county nearby me. So I still went to the same one all the time, but occasionally I'd go to the other ones just to see what they have. And one of the shops had just like so many. They had ordered so much of that Image comic stuff. They had plenty of back issues. So I'd go in and I'd read like issue 4 or 6 of something. Brigade. I remember, and if I liked it, I'd go and get the back issues. So that's how I kind of got into Image comics. Stormwatch was my favorite of them at the time, but I like picked up issue like 4 or 5 or 6 of Stormwatch. Same with Wildcats. I didn't pick up Wildcats till those later. Then I went back and got, because like I said, they just had so many of them that I could just go to that one shop and pick them up if I wanted them, and then put them on my pull list. So
Yeah,
the ones I ended up reading regularly were Stormwatch, Wildcats, Cyberforce, and Wetworks when they came around. All of a sudden, Dead. What was the name of that one?
Deadshot.
The one that Jim Lee started and Tim Sale took over.
Death Blow.
Death
Death
Blow.
Blow. There we go. Death Blow. That was one of my favorites. The Tim Sale.
That
Death
I
Blow.
enjoyed. Yes. Yeah, I remember picking them all up, and at that time period, again, yeah, there was with so much being made, and I think that's where I was getting more indie at that time was like the Malibu books.
Right.
And was it Malibu that also did the Protectors? That Malibu? There was a set of superheroes that were more I found out later that they were more public domain characters. So there were characters like the Protector, and they had their own gimmick books. Like one of the characters had a book with the bullet hole in the center of the book. Uh, there was a character. There was a bunch of books at that time that I enjoyed because of the sheer silliness of it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it was fun because of it. And so the Protectors themselves, each character had a title. Can't remember the names off the top of my head right now. I think one of them was called the Ferret or something like that. And that was like the wild man character, the Wolverine kind of character. And I enjoyed them. And then I was picking up some of the Malibu stuff. And then the Image stuff, I grabbed all of those at the time they came out. And I think Spawn was probably my favorite because I was more interested because it was it was Todd's book. And the
I
other ones I
thought
picked
Greg
up because I picked
Capullo
up.
did a better Todd than Todd did.
Probably. And I stuck with that book for quite a while before I realized I have no idea what this guy's writing. What is he trying to put out? It was like the concept was interesting, and I liked the timer meter because it made it seem like, oh, this may actually have an ending, kind of a thing, until they dropped that altogether. And then around that time, Valiant came out, and I was like, not on the first run of Valiant stuff, like after it got, kind of more popular. So it was like trying to get those back issues of Valiants was type of thing. And then you had the crossover, that Deathmate thing, which was the Valiant and Image crossover that was like the pinnacle of covers and stuff like that. That I ended up ordering. I don't know if it was it's called American Something Comics. It was like a mail order catalog. Very similar to what was it? Dynamic Forces. It was like a precursor to Dynamic Forces, where you basically a catalog. And yeah, American Something Comics, and then you would basically buy to get like the gold edition. You had to buy a bunch of copies of each set of books, and me and my buddy paid into that to get all these books, just to get that one gold book and to get it damaged when we got the dang thing. Deathmate Black, I think, was the special, but it was like, for years I had copies of those.
Well, as a question for us, did you gents mention Simon Bisley? We did. Did he do Batman versus the Judge Dredd? That book looked awesome. Thoughts?
He did.
He did?
Yes, I remember when that came out. I remember picking it up. I don't remember the story. I don't remember the story, but I remember picking that up.
I've never been a huge Simon Bisley fan, but it's really just a taste thing.
Right. Yeah, I get it.
He, especially since like something like Lobo was supposed to be a parody of 90s over-the-top comics.
Mm-hmm.
But then it turned it stopped being a parody, and it started being a 90s over-the-top comic. And then like Simon Bisley started to specialize in 90s over-the-top comics.
Yeah.
Batman and Judge Dredd. That's and
Simon Bisley was like the Coca-Cola version of Kevin O'Neill. Kevin O'Neill was craft beer, and Simon Bisley was Coke.
I got nothing. I got no problem with his art. I think he's good, but it was just never really my taste. That 90s over the top stuff, even parodies of it. 80s over the top stuff. Then you got me, like you said, Kevin O'Neill. Yes, Saul says, yeah, the Bisley Lobo run was good. The art looked rough. 62 just that I just read Slain the Horned God. Bisley did the art. Yeah.
That's a 2008.
I got and I just never read much of his stuff to really get into it. Because like I said, he was At that time, he was the go-to parody 90s over the top stuff, but then he just became the 90s over the. It was weird. It was
Well, I think
weird.
that even the suits thought they were publishing Lobo because it was profitable, but the creative teams were well aware that that thing was supposed to be a parody.
Right. Has Biz done anything lately besides covers and things I've seen of his?
I haven't seen his name on anything, but I haven't really like kept an eye out.
Yeah.
And yeah, I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I can't think of anything.
Yeah, like even the last image I saw of his was probably a Lobo image, because I might have seen the same TikTok you have seen about the story of Lobo and how he was supposed to be a parody that just was like too good of a character, so to speak, that
Yeah.
people loved it.
People love badass characters. Saul says Bisley Batman versus JD was incredible art. Jared, you must look at it. Okay. The art is eye-turning. I will have to check that out then. Batman versus Judge Dredd. Like I said, I've always liked his art. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just the comics themselves have never really appealed to me because I was never a 90s over-the-top superhero fan.
Right.
As I say that, I'm reminded that just 2 weeks ago, I gave away to students my issues of Brigade from the 90s. That they were pretty over the top 90s stuff, but not parody. Rob Liefeld Studio. Extreme, just like Pookie. Let's see, what else did I get this week? Issue 26 of Rogue Sun, guest starring Radiant Black. And there are 2 Rogue Sons now, brother and sister. This is the story of Rogue Sun is the guy in the back. His father was Rogue Sun. His estranged father was Rogue Sun before him. And his father died, and the Rogue Sun amulet got passed down to him. He's like 17. And he's a superhero now. And his estranged father went on to have another family. I think a son who's around 10 and a daughter who's around, I don't know, 16. And that daughter was always wanted to inherit Rogue Sun, the amulet, but she never did. But then, due to complications in the story, she got her own Rogue Sun amulet. And the father is still around as a ghost in the amulet to talk to his estranged son. So that makes for some awkward chatter. But it's a fun superhero story. And this, you know, they cross over with Radiant Black, which is the other massive verse, as it says there under the number. Massive versus the shared universe that this Image book takes place in. So that's why they can cross over. But both Rogue Sun and Radiant Black have been solid B+ comics. So I enjoy them. Solid B+ comic. What's a B+? What's a solid B+ comic you two enjoy? What can you think of? Yeah, not the best comics you've ever read. But you like them. If there were more of them, you'd buy more of them.
I don't know if I could pick out a B comic, because to me, I tend to, when I read a comic and I enjoy it, it's like, I enjoyed that. And, you know, kind of move on from there. I don't think there's...
I think you buy all B+ comics.
I probably do.
Yeah.
I probably do buy those, because sometimes when I have something that I really like, I'm trying to think if there's been something that I really like, where it's like, you know, what is it that blows me away with it? Like the Mike Aldridge stuff, over the
Okay.
years. When he
The
would do
Silver
like,
Surfer?
not even more of his own stuff, like the Madman
Oh,
stuff, or the
okay. Madman, Atomics.
the Atomics. Madman is good for that. The record book that he did, Red something,
Okay. Red
uh,
Rocket
Red
7 or
Rocket,
something?
Red
I think there's a
7, Rocket
number
7.
after it.
Yeah, and I
There
thought
might
that
be a
was
number after
great
it. I don't
because
remember.
it was his own like thing, and even the book size was interesting. So, when there's something like that where it's like, oh, this is really cool. It's stuff
Right.
that I guess would be the A plus. The Guy
Mhm.
Darrow stuff when he does Rusty, and
Okay.
they print it in that like oversized
Jeff
book.
Darrow, right?
Jeff Darrow, yeah, Jeff
Right.
Darrow. Stuff like that where that ends up standing out to being the A plus
Okay.
stuff, and then everything else kind of falls into, these are the B titles.
Yeah, I suppose New Warriors after Mark Bagley left.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't the same thing, but it was still quite enjoyable. There was
Right.
no reason to quit.
You'd like put the Bagley stuff at A stuff for you, and then it went down to a
Yeah.
B plus. You're still okay
Yeah.
with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me it would be like John Byrne's X-Men would be the A, and
Right.
then New Mutants would be the B or even the C.
Okay.
Kind of a thing where I enjoyed them, but they weren't the X-Men.
Right.
That kind of a thing. Whereas
Yeah.
like some books that I read just for the sheer fun of it, I think Power Pack for me was that way too.
Mm-hmm.
That I enjoyed the early Power Pack just because it was it was it was the superhero stuff in that Marvel world, but they were the kids running around, and that was fun because it was
Mm-hmm.
like you didn't have to take that book, I guess, seriously
Right.
if I was to put them into like a category. And then the C and D books were like Star Comics. I enjoyed them, but
Mm-hmm.
they weren't the best drawn, and they didn't have
Right.
the best stories. But I liked the fact that they existed, and I enjoyed
Mm-hmm.
getting them. I think that's where I would put it, like that kind of a category. And
Right.
then
But nowadays I wouldn't buy any C or D books.
right,
Like you don't want them on your pull list because
right, and
books are
and
too
$4.
right.
Yeah.
So it's like, then they're the ones that stand out. So where would you put Godzilla versus Great Gatsby? Because that's just an oddity of its own. But wouldn't you had at one
I
time
think I
considered
put
that
that as an A. I
you would
like
put
that
that
one a
as an A?
lot. Yeah. I
But
will
it's
read
like
that one again at
right.
some point. I think that was an A. I really enjoyed it. If they were to put out a deluxe hardcover edition, I might get it. That's the real sign of an A book. If you double dip on it for some reason, because they put
That's true too. Because a nice big book may have all those covers would
mm-hmm.
be a nice addition, and then if they add anything to it.
So yeah, I'd say that one was an A. I would definitely say. And of course, I got the latest. Where is it? Oh, the latest Usagi. 10,000 Plums, Part 2 of 5. Legacy numbering is 281. A good issue. Once again, what I usually say about Usagi is there's only A's with Usagi. There's only A plus, A minus, and A with Usagi. An A minus is the lowest I'd give an issue of Usagi. Because they're all really good. Because Stan Sakai is just sort of a master storyteller, and it's one guy. It's not like they're switching off creators who I like less. So all A's for Usagi, and this is like an A. This has been an A plus. See, these first two issues have been really good, I have to say. Some true horror in them. What are your A books, Paolo?
Traditionally, Avengers. Fantastic
Which
Four by
issues of
Byrne.
Avengers?
Well, I started reading with the Englehart run. I do like the
Okay.
shooter issues.
Me too. Like that
I
was
do
kind
like.
of my era of the Avengers. So that's what
Mhm.
I'd mostly give A's to. Is the Byrne issues, the Perez issues.
Yeah. Then Byrne comes back with Michelini, and those are kind of B plus. There's
Mhm.
some interesting stories, but they're not quite there. Then the Stern issues are definitely A, even with Al
So I think
Milgrom art.
I was out by then. I gave up like an issue like in the two aughts. Like 210 may have been my last issue of Avengers. So it's like I don't know anything after that. Well, I do know like Avengers Forever, I think was an A.
Mhm.
And I think the like late 90s revival with Perez and Busiek, they were an A.
Yeah.
Daredevil had that period between the two Frank Miller runs by
Yeah.
Danny O'Neill, and some of those issues with art by William Johnson are not A material.
Yeah, I gave up after Miller left Daredevil the first time. I stopped buying it regularly. Then I came back for Born Again. Then I left again.
Mhm. Doctor Strange has a bunch of. Doctor Strange had a short run by Chris Claremont around the 40s in this, and those are not very good. So they're kind of filler. I mean, it's only when Stern comes in
The
that it
Marshall
gets good.
Rogers run, right?
Yeah, the Marshall Rogers does the first arc, and then Paul Smith
Right.
becomes the regular artist.
That was good stuff, I remember.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but there are a few Gene Colins in the middle.
Gene Colan's Doctor Strange was always a solid B.
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of a Gene Colan. I think the only Gene Colan stuff I'd put at an A was some of the Tomb of Dracula. That series
In
I
there,
really
in there,
enjoyed.
in the early Daredevil.
Early Daredevil.
I don't
Mike
like
Murdoch?
his
I don't
Iron.
know about Mike Murdoch.
Yeah, I don't like his Iron Man because I get that the everything starts melting into the shadows. Works
Hmm.
well when you're trying to do crime noir in Daredevil or
Yeah.
occult like in Doctor Strange. But when you're drawing technology, the armor is not supposed to fuse with the backgrounds and with the borders, the panel borders.
Then
So I
there's
don't
like
think.
I was just reminded me when you mentioned shadows. There's guys who the old, masters without a masterpiece. Joe Kubert comes to mind, who I think was an A-level talent, but I don't think there's one comic he did besides letters from facts from Sarajevo that I would say were A-level. Like I don't, but he was just like a victim of his time.
Right.
Like
By the time comics had developed an organized fandom, Hubert was not doing superheroes anymore.
right,
And in superheroes, he only really did Hawkman, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
basically, he's known for Hawkman. Yeah, that's it in superheroes. Tarzan, can you
But
consider
like
that superheroes? That's just more pulp. So, yeah.
his end of the job was always terrific. The Sergeant Rock.
Yeah.
He likes Tarzan. His Tarzan was really good. His Sergeant Rock really well drawn, but as comics they were always B's to me. Like the highest grade I'd
mhm.
give his Tarzan or Sergeant Rock was a B, but he
Well,
was an A-level talent.
right in Tarzan, when the Tarzan was not a comic that you would read for a continuing story because it
No,
wasn't there.
that was meant to, you'd read an issue here, you'd read an issue. And
Mhm.
another more
Yeah.
modern guy who I think is like that too is Lee Weeks.
Yeah,
I think Lee Weeks is an A-level talent,
he is.
but
Yeah.
He
I don't think
never had he never had a chance to have a gig on something big.
yeah.
And, and when he did, he was old.
Yeah. And if you look at his work now, it's still terrific, but
Mhm.
hmm. I find that weird like that. Like, and there's, I think I'd put, see, I don't know if everybody else would. I don't know if it's true like Greg Capullo. I think Greg Capullo is an A-level talent. Like I said, I think he did a better Spawn back in the McFarlane days than McFarlane did. I like his issues better.
But we could tell that right off the bat when he did Quasar.
Yes,
and
exactly.
And Grunwald kind of
Grunwald
kind of understood that he was not going to keep him for long because
right.
one of either the X or the Spider Office were going to get him, and Bob Harris did take him to New Mutants, and I do remember those New Mutants. You have to remember that we had Life, not New Mutants, X-Force. So we had Liefeld. Then Liefeld quits, and we have people trying to clone Liefeld.
Yep.
And then we have Greg Capullo being himself, and it was quite refreshing because he was the best storyteller. He was the one who had the best character poses. Because by the time we had Andy Kubert doing X-Men and Brandon Peterson doing Uncanny, and Brandon Peterson was kind of stiff,
right?
And X Factor had Jay Lee back when Jay Lee hadn't figured out how to draw yet. So
yeah,
there was a short period around 1993 when Greg Capullo was the best artist in the X office.
I don't even remember that era. Wow. but I think I mean but I think other people might say his like Batman, his New 52 was A-level comics, but I don't. So maybe he doesn't quite fit into this category of A-level talents who never had an A-level book because he was on Batman when it was popular. Right. So like I think I have to acquiesce to that and say he does not fit that. Just because I think the book was B-level at best doesn't mean I'm right.
Yeah.
When the rest of the world.
But Capullo got to the dream gig.
Yeah.
By the time he was not young, and he kind of went to Spawn at the worst time on the market to go to Spawn because it was after
early.
Yeah, but even then, so he went to Spawn just as the 90s bubble was collapsing.
Yeah, I thought he was there a little earlier than that, but I don't know. I can't remember because he was in Spawn because he and McFarlane used to trade off penciling and inking a lot too, I think.
Yeah, so that would have been around 95, 96. So yeah, that's right. 95, 96 would be right when Marvel buys Heroes World, and that's what collapses the market.
And
he
was on Spawn before then, though, I think.
Well, he was uncredited on Spawn for a little while, from what I understand.
Ah, I'd have to look it up. My memory's too fuzzy, and I wasn't buying that many Spawn issues, so it could have been 94 or 95, because Spawn came out in 92, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm thinking of issue like 25, that puts it at 94 anyway. So I have no idea. But yeah, anyway, who else is an A-level talent that never had an A-level? Like Lee Weeks?
Michael Golden, because they didn't let him.
Yeah, I was about to say Michael Golden.
Yeah. Some people might say his masterpiece was G.I. Joe number 38 or whatever. That's one issue.
Yeah. And Avengers Annual number 10.
I don't think Micronauts was a masterpiece, but that was probably the one he did almost the longest.
Yeah, he's like more known for like one-shots of stuff like Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
There's at least one story in Doctor Strange that everyone loves, and but there's no like a series run of stuff.
No, there's nothing long enough to call a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But he just has some really great 1 or 2 shots, like the first 2
Yeah,
issues of Fanfare.
and it's always
The
the art
things.
that's great. Nobody remembers the story.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
guess
he might be another one too.
Keith Pollard had a kind of fits that mold because he had a run in Amazing Spider-Man, but he's never in the top 10 of anyone's Spider-Man top 10.
I don't think he's an A-level talent though, Keith Pollard.
Mm.
I mean, I don't think anyone's putting him up there as an A-level talent. That's
I don't know.
I'm thinking a guy who's who people will say is an A-level talent, but they just don't. But the overall comic, usually because of the writing.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean that's why Joe Kubert doesn't have any A-level books, except for once again Facts from Sarajevo. I don't know if you guys ever read that. That's my favorite Kubert. Well, it's a graphic novel about his back when there was a war going on in Bosnia, and someone's friend, not Kubert's, was communicating at what was going on through faxes out of the city. See, Golden did an awesome Howard the Duck. So I was just reading about Howard the Duck today, and the latest back issue, which I think is issue 31, the month before this one. And I'd forgotten that I think I have that Golden Howard the Duck, but I just completely forgot about it.
And Bucky O'Hare.
Golden's Nom was great, but the print quality was horrific.
Yeah, the thing about the Nom, it's a cult hit, and even then, I remember the Brazilians were advertising the Nom on the quality of Golden's art, but even he didn't stay in the book for long.
Right.
Especially because the whole idea of the book seemed to be that they were going to be following different characters in different storylines. Although there were a few characters who showed up in every comic. So the Nom was never going to be a runaway hit.
It's weird though. I just thought of it right now. I don't think because of the way the United States restructured its army to be an all-volunteer army, I don't think we're ever going to see war be such an influence in comic book storytelling as it once was in the Vietnam days.
Right, because most people who do writing have never been in the armed forces.
Right. You'll never see like, Afghanistan and like the Nam, the Stan, or like Iraq. Nothing like that has ever come up. Of course, there've been stories set in those wars on occasion, but nothing like Vietnam, where Vietnam loomed large in so many comic stories, from the Punisher to the Nam was probably the last one. And of course, World War II loomed large in all comic stories, but not anymore.
Right. You don't have people coming out of Desert Storm and doing comics. And then we had the case of that Storm guy who did Stormwatch with Stolen Valor.
He was a good writer too. That annoyed me that he misrepresented his credentials getting the job, so they kicked him off. I was like, I didn't even finish his last story. That was a good series, though. I think that was Team Achilles.
Yeah.
Did you read that one?
I don't think so.
It was like the 4th volume of Stormwatch. What was interesting about it is Stormwatch Team Achilles. Once again, they worked for the United Nations, but they weren't superheroes themselves. I mean, in all practicality, they were, because they had gear, to make them be able to do stuff.
Mhm.
But they were under the umbrella of the United Nations, taking out superheroes who were, gone rogue or breaking the law in some country. They were, if they got the go ahead, they'd go in and they'd take down whatever super powered stuff was going on in wherever it was. So it was pretty interesting. It was kind of military, kind of it was sort of anti-superhero military, but I enjoyed it. It was a good
Okay,
book.
guy was definitely an A-level talent who never had an A-level book anywhere. Ron Randall.
I don't know if he was an A-level talent, but he was talented.
Like he's still putting out a new page
He's
every
still
week
putting out Checker, right?
Yeah, on his website, 1 page a week.
Okay. I'll have
So
to go. I
you can
used to
check
buy that when it was in Dark Horse Presents and its own single stuff.
Yeah, I have the trade paperback, which collects everything that was published on paper before he started doing things online.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
I
400
don't
pages.
know.
It's one of those Dark Horse mini-sized things.
You know what I never thought he was particularly good at action. And for an action comic, that was always like the worst part of Trekker. Like, I always enjoyed Trekker. Don't get me, I always thought it was around a B, but you're right. I think he is more talented than the finished product.
Right. Because
I don't know if I'd consider him an A-level talent, but I think he was more talented than
because for years I didn't see him anywhere, because the backup in the Brazilian New Teen Titans was the Baron Earth,
mm-hmm.
which was a backup in Warlord.
Mm-hmm.
And so because the stories were like 5 or 6 pages, they were good for filler. And they kept it running for a while in the New Teen Titans, and those were pretty good stories. And I remember Randall's art leapt out to me. It wasn't a superhero.
I always liked his art.
Mm-hmm. So since he
but
is
I always found
away from. He's mostly kept away from the big two, which kind of prevented him from becoming more famous. And Trekker was something that was published in bursts. It wasn't always available.
Yeah. I always liked Trekker, and I liked Trekker for the art, mostly. Mm-hmm. The stories were okay, but I don't remember a single one of them now. But I remember the art.
Yeah, the stories are not about the setting, so it's more about the character Mercy. She has an interesting personality, because she's tough as nails, but you kind of see that she wants to go home.
It always seemed to me like, as much as I liked Trekker, I think his art would have looked better in another genre. What that genre is, I have no idea. But I don't know how to describe it.
He should have done a romance daily newspaper strip.
Maybe. And like adventure superheroes adventure comics are what it always seemed to me like his art would be better suited for something other than what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what. I don't know if he thought that. But it always just like it was always good, but I'm like, I think he would be better if he were drawing something other than this. Once again, I have no idea what. So it's a weird thought. Let's see. Saul is saying Golden did a small poster called Merry Marvel March, a masterpiece that he now sells at cons. But I have the original that you have to get by mail. Okay. Oh, and do you consider Chaikin an A-lister? American Flag was incredible for both story, art, and even lettering. Yeah, I would consider Chaikin an A-lister, and I think he's got small masterpieces. I think American Flag is a small masterpiece in terms of it kind of petered out at the end. I think Black Kiss even might be a small masterpiece. But I don't think that the rest of the world might not agree with that. But I would
I don't know.
say
I was always under the impression that Chaikin is the type of artist that everybody wants to try, but a lot of people don't because he's not in the characters that matter.
Yeah. And I think Chaikin is also an artist who may not be as talented as a lot of other A-level artists, but he's made the most of his talent. He's put the work in.
Yeah. And considering how much he's considering how opinionated he is about the notion of being an auteur rather than a workhorse, he does know how to do for a while, for many years at least, he did know how to do the monthly grind.
Yeah, there's not a monthly grind.
Yeah, but that's not what he has very particular ideas of what comics are supposed to be, and the monthly grind is not it.
Right.
But yeah, Chaikin is a contemporary of Walt Simonson and Mike Kaluta. They both came into the business at the same time. And they have somewhat similar styles in the way they lay out a page or do character design. More Simonson than Kaluta when compared to Chaikin, because you can see in the 70s stuff that they seem to have the same references.
Yeah. And I have to say, Simonson's another interesting one. Once again, I think he's an A-level talent. I think he's got masterpieces, but I don't know them.
Because you haven't read Thor.
Thor, that's the one that comes to mind for me. But being that was kind of, and I'd even give his Ragnarok, I think, is a masterpiece. I think that one's really good. But being that he was, mostly a DC guy, and I was not reading DC books, I don't even know.
So you've never read his Manhunter.
Manhunter I've read, but that was early Walt Simonson. You could see the potential there. I'm talking like all the stuff he did in the 90s, I never read.
Fourth World, yeah.
Probably the stuff in the past, like 85, I probably didn't read his Thor stuff.
Yeah, because to me it was Thor X Factor, and Thor X Factor, and then a Fantastic Four.
I've read a few issues of
and it's kind of also in that order of, I think, the best to okay. Like, I think his Thor was great, X Factor was great, and Fantastic Four was fun. I don't know if I could say that would be his, his masterpieces. Thor, definitely.
Right.
Definitely Thor and X Factor.
If we can give an A-lister one masterpiece, that's good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then his writing on other stuff where he didn't draw was still good as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm so I love his Ragnarok. I think that could see Black Kiss was good art, but too close to porn for Saul. I really can only judge Black Kiss 2 because I didn't read all of Black Kiss 1, but I was okay with it being close to porn.
It's not porn.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, it's mainstream. It's mainstream European entertainment.
You're talking to Americans, Paolo. It's porn. Just move on. You're talking to Americans.
It's just tits.
Shaken head style. Yeah. Just a blowjob here or there. Nothing. Sin City was better. I liked the first Kaluta's. See, I love Kaluta's artwork.
I do as well.
I never read all of Starstruck until, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago now when it came out in that big hardcover collected edition.
Yeah.
The story is so all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no coherence. It wasn't meant to be one story. It's incoherent when you read it all as one thing. So it's a little weird, but that book is a masterpiece, even if I can't even if it's not one coherent story.
If Elaine Lee had set it up as a series of shorts,
Mm-hmm.
and you could read each short independently, and then but if you read all of them, you kind of understand how the world works. It would have worked better. But she was trying to keep an ongoing narrative,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why it seems disjointed, because it jumps all over the place without warning.
Right. I found it very confusing. And Sin City, well, I think Frank Miller has plenty of masterpieces. But I like the earliest Sin City first. Like I like Sin City volumes 1 and 2, I think I liked. I fell off after like volume 3 or so.
I still think that Martha
Starstruck
Washington
is ahead of its time.
Yeah, suppose. Yeah, I still
I'm
think
100%
that
okay with too much woke too.
I still think Martha Washington is Frank Miller's best work, but nobody will agree with me.
I know I picked it up. I can't remember a thing about it.
I did not read Martha Washington till like 5 years ago when I took it out of the library, and it was terrific. I remember reading I may have read like the first series way back when, and I thought it was okay. But when I read it like 5 years ago, I was like, wow, this is terrific. Dave Gibbons is I love the originals by Dave Gibbons. That might be my favorite Dave Gibbons.
Yeah, I have the originals that I didn't get into it. It might warrant a reread.
Dave Gibbons fan. He didn't get into it either, but I loved it. I just think it's beautiful, concise. The storytelling is good. The story isn't. I like the simplicity of the story. I think that's what puts people off from it. It's a really simple story about growing up in friendship and fitting in, and there's nothing. It's not Watchmen. There's no levels to it. And that's kind of what I really liked about it. But like I said, I can see like my friend Bunch didn't like it, but I think it's just there's more underneath the surface than you see on first read. But I can see how you just skim off the surface because there's not that much underneath it. But it's one of my, like I said, I think it might be my favorite Dave Gibbons piece. You guys haven't mentioned the Hernandez. That's because we were trying to think of masters without masterpieces, and they got masterpieces. They're A level. Yeah. They're both, yeah. We were trying to think like it's actually a much smaller category, A level talent without a masterpiece, and it's usually confined to sort of mainstream superhero guys who didn't have good writing or had B level writing. They never really had any A level writing. The masters are easier to point out because they're masters with masterpieces. There's lots of them, kind of. I can look right over on my shelf and see, Charles Burns, Black Hole.
So
what else do we have over there? Clyde fans. Great stuff.
Yeah, there's plenty of artists who's, master what they did, but as you mentioned, Alex Toth.
Alex Toth is the class. I think that's where I first heard the phrase "masters without a masterpiece" was in regards to Alex Toth.
Yeah, somebody's gonna reprint his Zorro.
Oh yeah, beautiful. I already have it. I think someone reprinted it like 30 years ago, and I got it then. Maybe even an Image. But once again, no, it's fine. A beautiful A-level art. The story is Zorro. It's fine.
John Buscema, or would you consider the Silver Surfer?
No.
No. Yeah, because
And
again, missing the writer.
Some people might consider his Conan master, at least to some
yeah,
level, his Avengers.
because Conan and Avengers were comics that he dipped in and out, and he had long runs on both, and then he
Right.
would go, and then he would leave, and then he would come back. He would disagree that his Avengers is a masterpiece.
Yes.
But he's a consummate professional, and
Right.
everything he did was good.
And I say, as long as there's sort of a consensus that it's around a masterpiece, I'll give it to him.
Yeah.
Like I said, Greg Capullo and Batman, not a masterpiece to me. But as long as there's enough people who the general consensus, I think John Buscema reaches that consensus.
Sure.
Right.
And
Sal Buscema, maybe not a master, maybe not masterpiece, but solid.
But yeah,
I like his stuff.
But yeah, everybody likes reading his stuff. He had a long run in the Incredible Hulk, and another one in Spider-Man.
Yeah.
And you can't get away from that. You will recognize that he was there.
To me, like I've said this before, to me, Sal Buscema is, to use a baseball term, the Mendoza line of good comic book artists. Mendoza was a baseball player who kept getting sent down to the minors, and I think his batting average was around 200. That became known as the Mendoza line. If your batting average dropped below, you'd get sent down to the minors. If it went back up, you'd get called up to the majors. And to me, Sal Buscema is the line of, you've got to be better than Sal Buscema to be called good, in my mind. To be called a good comic artist, you got to be at least as good as Sal Buscema, because he was a good comic book artist.
Interesting interpretation.
Barry Smith has got masterpieces. I don't think he's. I even think his latest Monsters everybody loved. That's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got Conan, Red Nails. I mean, I don't, like I said, I think he's an easy A-level talent with masterpieces. I collected all Buscema art for a few years. Oh, cool. Cool. Like, I'm trying to think of anyone else. Like who's like, most of the guys I got on my arm. Peter Bagg, hate, masterpiece. That's easy.
Remember when when Kevin Maguire was on Justice League, when JLI split into JLA and JLE, and Bart Sears was put onto Justice League Europe book. Is Bart Sears good enough? I never really liked his art.
Not mine.
I know he has fans. And
he's got fans.
I never quite got it. I suppose that
he's as good enough to. He's. I wouldn't put him in the master, but he's as good as Sal Buscema at least. So he's good.
Sure.
That just reminds me. Does Kevin Maguire have a masterpiece? Would JLA be it?
Justice League is definitely.
It would probably be Justice League.
Yeah, that would be his shot if he, like I said, not a masterpiece to me, but I don't really know it that well. But I can accept that other people think it is. So.
Greg LaRocque.
Does he have anything else that ranks like that?
No, I guess not.
Not like that. No.
But he could be called a master still, because his art is really good.
Right.
What were you saying,
when he and Giffen went to do Defenders, it was also very fun. Greg LaRocque, he never had anything.
No, but I think I was never a Greg LaRocque fan, but I'd say he's as good as Sal Buscema.
And Ed Hannigan.
No, but he had great covers.
That's the thing. He had great covers, but he didn't stick around long enough.
I wouldn't call him a man
on titles.
Right.
Yeah.
He didn't.
Yeah. I don't know if he had enough to. I don't know.
Howard Porter, does he have a masterpiece?
No. It's not his JLA. It's Grant Morrison's JLA.
Yeah.
The fact
that
that
could be
he's
a
the one who
problem.
draws it is incidental.
Okay.
He makes a lot of mistakes, especially on faces, and is not even saved by the inking, is saved by the coloring.
So once again, he may be a guy who is not a master, but has a masterpiece because of Morrison. So that's an interesting thing too. I don't know how many people there are like that.
Yeah,
because when
usually
you say A-level, when you say A-level talents, no one ever mentions Howard Porter. This is the first time I've heard.
Right.
So yeah, is he still around?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
but it's the same thing. Guys who draw for Grant Morrison might not be famous. It's like everybody likes Animal Man. Nobody remembers Chas Trog.
I was gonna say, who drew that? I don't even know. Sao Paulo, how dare you? H. Porter is AAA.
No, I'm sorry. No, he's not.
That'd be an interesting other category.
Yeah, he has some Porter may have some interesting tricks, but he does a lot of mistakes.
Okay.
But yeah, nobody remembers Chas Trog. I don't even remember who drew his Doom Patrol.
Oh, that's right. I don't either.
Yeah, he had a lot of different artists on The Invisibles. I think the most famous may have been Phil Jimenez. He did, and then he Frank Whiteley, and so if there's a guy who transcends Morrison, it's Frank Whiteley.
Yeah, definitely. Because he's had, to me, like the one he just did with Mark Miller, that became the TV show that was no good. Also, I can't remember Jupiter's Legacy. That was a masterpiece to me. I just love that series. So Frank, I definitely put Frank, and people would put like his Grant Morrison X-Men up there too, probably Quitely.
Sure. He wasn't there for everything, and because there had to be a lot of fill-ins.
Right,
and
but
even
people
the last
missed.
arc was drawn by Mark Silvestri.
Yeah, people missed him on. People's favorite Grant Morrison X-Men is the Frank Quitely drawn X-Men issues. Yeah. So no doubt. Jason Lutz, Berlin. There's another masterpiece, but once again, that's just one thing, but it's still a masterpiece. But it's easier to find the guys with masterpieces than it is to find the guys who were A-level, who are masters without a masterpiece.
Sure, if you're an indie success, you get the masterpiece just by being there. So you do something, people like it, and if you do something else, people will buy it. It's different because in the superheroes, it's incidental. You have to be there at the moment to.
Right, you have to be. Most indie guys write their own stuff, so you have to be teamed with an A-level writer to even have a shot.
Right.
Let's see.
That's why nobody remembers Mike Vosberg because he never.
He did do that. Didn't he? I just
He did that Paradox at Bizarre Adventures, and he had a run on the She-Hulk.
I bought a book of his just a couple of years ago. What it was a woman. I just ran into it. It's in my closet. Oh, I forget her name. It was like a woman private eye detective in Hollywood. There was magic involved. Was that Vosberg?
Was it?
It may have been. I'll find it this week and we'll look at it. I can't remember the name of it, but it was the best work I'd seen from him. I mean, I'm not telling you the book overall was a masterpiece, but the art was really, really good.
Sure. And I'm not saying I don't like Mike Vosberg. I do. But he's one of those guys who was never in the right place.
No. There's plenty of guys like that. There's plenty of guys who got a shot. Here's an interesting one. What was his name? Battle Chasers.
Joe Madureira.
Does Joe Madureira have a masterpiece? I'm not that
Yeah.
familiar with his work, so I don't know.
He had a run on the Uncanny X-Men.
Uncanny X-Men put him on the map, and
He was
Battle
popular.
Chaser.
We know that.
Yeah, Battle
But
Chaser
is he a
probably
master, and did he have a masterpiece?
he probably would have if he finished Battle Chasers.
Right.
Yeah.
That would have probably been his masterpiece.
I think he was on his way to maybe being a master, but then he changed jobs.
Right.
He got into video games.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it wouldn't have been Battle Chasers. It probably would have been whatever would have been after that.
Yeah.
Would have been the big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think anybody would say he's a master.
Right.
Just
he was
because, like I said,
yeah, he was popular at the time, and just as he was becoming big, he quit.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with Wilson. He would have any masterpiece would have been after Battle Chasers, because by the time he would be close to 30, and he'd be doing something else.
Because at Battle Chaser, his art was starting to change slightly. Where he was, once he was done with the X-Men stuff, Battle Chaser, I think, is where he was developing whatever his style would have gone to. And that's why I think whatever would have been after Battle Chasers would have become the masterpiece. If he was still, creating his own thing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Here's one that people probably don't know. Jackson Guice. Butch Jackson Guice. I would say his masterpiece is Ruse from CrossGen, but nobody knows it.
Mm. Well, but he was on Ed Brubaker's Captain America.
That's right, but
once again, people like it because it's Ed Brubaker, not because it's Jackson Guice.
Right.
Right.
Steve Epting was on that too.
Mm-hmm.
I think Steve Epting's masterpiece, once again, nobody knows. I think he did it. Velvet with Brubaker.
Yes.
That is definitely a masterpiece.
It's a very good read, but it's not on everybody's radar.
Yeah, but it's not like there's another one, masterpieces that are on no one's radar. I hadn't thought of that right now. But definitely Ruse and Velvet would be two of them for me. Two masterpieces nobody knows about. Oh, well.
And here's the thing. Steve Epting has been in the business for quite a while, and I do remember his Avengers with Bob Harris. And he made Bob Harris's stories be very interesting. He's the one. I had remembered that Larry Hama had a run in the Avengers. It was not very good. It was barely serviceable. It wasn't very exciting. Bob Harris's stuff was more exciting. And Steve Epting was drawing, because it was Steve Epting drawing both. It's Steve Epting with Tom Palmer on inks. But Epting got more mileage out of the work he did with Harris than the one he did with Hama.
Okay. Well, we'll be on Paulo's channel next week. It's just about time for us to end. Here's some balloons for you.
That's right.
Woohoo! So keep your eyes on Paulo's channel. And let's get some. Hold on, lasers are this. We need some lasers. There we go.
Yeah.
And everyone have a good night out there. And we'll try to think of some stuff, masterpieces that not many people know about. We're gonna have to think of that for next week. All right.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Yeah.